الحمد لله الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. قال الله تعالى في القرآن المجيد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. Amma ba'd. Dear brothers and sisters, we begin by praising Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We send peace and blessings upon Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, upon his companions, upon all those who have treaded in their footsteps of righteousness and piety. We ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from those who follow in their footsteps, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He make us from those who follow the teachings of the Quran and the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. In today's khutbah, I'd like to go over one of the smallest surahs in the Quran, Surah Al-Kawthar. Surah Al-Kawthar, although being the smallest and one of the smallest, the second smallest surah in the Quran, we know that the Quran in its entirety is something very special. We know that in order for a person to be a Muslim, they need to believe in the Quran. They need to believe that the Quran is something special. They need to believe that the Quran is munazzal min Allah, that it is revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's divine in its nature. But within the Quran itself, there are ayahs, there are surahs which have special places in the hearts of the believers. There are surahs which have specialties, special features. From these surahs, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions that Surah Al-Waqi'ah, Surah Al-Rahman, Surah Al-Mulk. These surahs have different virtues. When it comes to Surah Al-Kawthar, there's a hadith, a narration, that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ was sitting amongst his companions, and he lifted his head. Right? They were just sitting down, and the Prophet ﷺ had his head down. And suddenly he lifted his head, and he was smiling. And the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they are all looking at him. You know, suddenly he lifts his head and he has this big smile on his face. And he says, نَزِلَتْ عَلَيَّ سُورَةٌ آنِفَةٌ, that just right now, a surah had been revealed. Right? The Prophet ﷺ, he wouldn't occasionally do this. Occasionally when an ayah was revealed, then okay, an ayah was revealed. A surah had been revealed, okay, a surah had been revealed. But at this instance, when Surah Al-Kawthar had been revealed, the Prophet ﷺ not only mentioned it to everyone that was around him, but the Prophet ﷺ was smiling as well. Right? So this surah made the Prophet ﷺ smile. And in order to understand really the situation that Rasulullah ﷺ was going through at this moment, you can appreciate the smile of the Prophet ﷺ. It was at this time, you know, this surah, the last ayah of the surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, إِنَّ شَأْنِيَكَ هُوَ الْأَبَتَرُ. The rough translation is, indeed, those who go against you, those who are, إِنَّ شَأْنِيَكَ means those who agitate, those who go against you, your enemies. Indeed, your enemies, who al-abatar, will be the ones who will be forgotten. Right? There's a very big context behind the surah. This surah was revealed at a time when Rasulullah ﷺ had lost his son. His son was a very young age. It was just at that time when the son of Rasulullah ﷺ began, you know, moving around, began getting very close to the Prophet ﷺ. It was at that time when Rasulullah ﷺ's son had passed away. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided that He would take away his son from Rasulullah ﷺ. And not only that, you know, when you have to understand that Rasulullah ﷺ, he was a person who did not have the opportunity to spend time with his parents like many of us do. The Prophet ﷺ had lost his parents off at a very early age. He had lost his father before he passed away, before he was even born. His mother his mother had passed away when the Prophet ﷺ was a very young age. And even from those years that the Prophet ﷺ spent with his mother, many of those years were not with his mother. We know that the Prophet ﷺ, he had lived with his foster mother for a number of years. So altogether, the Prophet ﷺ had spent only a few years with his mother, with his father, not a single day at all. And by human nature, we know that at times when we don't have something, when it comes to our children, we want to give it to them. If we were unable to get an education, if we were unable to live the sort of life that we really wanted, then we'll work very hard to make sure that our children get that sort of education. We'll work very hard to make sure that our children get that life. Right? And that's why we see, to the youngsters, why our parents work so hard. Because they want a good life for us. And as youngsters, we may not understand this, but once you get older and you have your own children, you'll understand it very well. It will just kick in like this, second nature. So the Prophet ﷺ had this very deep connection with his son. People already have a deep connection with their children, but this was with a different sentiment. That the Prophet never had a chance to experience his parents. And therefore the Prophet ﷺ wanted to give that to his child. And at a very young age, the Prophet ﷺ lost his son. And back then, the way people lived was a little different from the way our buildings and homes are built today. Back then, you have in today's time these townhomes, these row homes, right, where they're right next to one another. The Prophet ﷺ's neighbor was Abu Lahab. Abu Lahab was the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, but also one of the greatest enemies, one of the worst enemies of Islam, one of the worst enemies of Rasulullah ﷺ. And the way their homes were constructed back then was very different from how we have it. Today we have a backyard and the front yard is there. But for them, the way they had it was their front yard was kind of confined, and their front yard was really where they would spend majority of their time. Right? It was like their living room without a roof. And Abu Lahab was the neighbor of Rasulullah ﷺ. And the only thing that was separating their homes was just this, very thin wall. So that when the son of Rasulullah ﷺ passed away, you can hear that commotion, you can hear the noise in the house of Rasulullah ﷺ, that anxiety, that stress, the grief of having lost a child. And Abu Lahab, being the neighbor, overheard all this. And he was overjoyed with happiness. Imagine what a disgusting person that is. That even at a sensitive moment like that, if people say, I wouldn't even wish that for my enemies. And over here you have Abu Lahab, who's the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ. He's rejoicing. He's happy. And he leaves his home and he's running around the streets of Mecca. And he's filled with joy and happiness. He's like Muhammad Batara, that Muhammad will be forgotten. No one will remember Muhammad anymore. Why? Because it's the son who carries on the lineage. Right? So Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's not like he didn't hear any of this. He heard all this. Even when a person loses their child and they're grieving for a number of weeks, months, years, whatever the case, even when people come by to console you, even when people come by to offer their condolence, it's a very difficult moment. Even when someone comes and says, I'm very sorry for your loss, even when they're trying to comfort you, it's very difficult. But imagine now, there's this guy who's running around super happy at your loss, and he's shouting at the top of his lungs, and you can hear him clearly. He's going around saying, no one will remember Muhammad anymore. Why? Because he has no more male offsprings. He doesn't have any more sons. No one's going to remember him anymore. And he's happy. He's running around. And this went on with many of the enemies of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You had As ibn Wa'il, who, told the Quraysh the same thing. Leave this guy. You don't have to worry about him anymore. Let him do whatever he wants now. After he passes away, No one's going to remember him. No one's going to carry on his lineage. No one's going to carry on his name. He has daughters, but, they're not going to carry on his progeny. We don't have to worry about this guy. Just leave him alone. That was their next plan now. After they had failed in trying to assassinate the Prophet ﷺ, after they had failed in trying to stop the Prophet ﷺ, this was their second resort. That, we don't have to worry anymore. He doesn't have anyone to carry on his name. And that was that became now their solution to Rasulullah ﷺ. That don't worry about him. No one's going to remember him. Everyone will forget about him. And it was at that time when this surah was revealed. The Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the Quran to us for many purposes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the Quran for our guidance. In the Quran, Allah mentions that, the Quran, inna nahnu nazzalna dhikra wa inna lahu lahafidun. It was revealed, and Allah takes the responsibility of protecting the Quran because it's intended to be guidance for all of humanity. That's something we ask from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala immediately when we open the Quran. Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. Right? Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, guide us to the straight path. The Quran is there to teach us halal and haram, what is right, what is wrong. But the Quran is also there to direct our emotions. Right? وَمَنْ يَهْدِ قَلْبَهُ. And the one whose heart Allah guides. So the Quran has many functions. The Quran has many purposes. And one of those purposes is to guide our emotions. That our emotions should be within the confines, or it should be guided with what the Quran is saying, with what the Quran teaches us. And we see at this instance, at this juncture in the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that although Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam faced a huge loss in his life, he lost his son. To make things worse, you have the enemies of the Prophet ﷺ running around saying things like, leave this guy. We're very happy he lost his son. It's a big hit on a person's emotions. It's very stressful. But at this moment, we see that Rasulullah ﷺ allowed the Quran, the revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to guide his emotions. Because when this surah was revealed, the Prophet ﷺ, as we mentioned, looked up with a big smile on his face. And he says that the Prophet ﷺ, he mentions that a surah has been revealed now. And this surah is taking away all our problems, right? All the problems Rasulullah ﷺ was facing at that point, all the anxiety, all the stress, all the grief, all of it was gone. Why? Because the surah was revealed. What exactly is it about the surah that makes it so special? The beginning, Allah starts off by saying, Inna a'tainaka al-Kawthar. Indeed, we have given you al-Kawthar. Right? Al-Kawthar has been defined in many ways. Imam Qurtubi actually mentions that there's 11 different definitions of Al-Kawthar, or 11 different references of what Kawthar means. The hadith of Rasulullah ﷺ, which is narrated in both authentic hadith in Muslim and in Tirmidhi, the Prophet ﷺ mentions that Al-Kawthar is in reality referring to a river in Jannah. And it is this river in Jannah, from Jannah, which all the believers will drink from. All the believers will enjoy the bounties of this river. So this Al-Kawthar is not only a gift to Rasulullah ﷺ, but it's also a gift to all of the followers of Rasulullah ﷺ. And you have to understand that the Prophet ﷺ, as much as he loved his own family, as much as he loved his child, the love the Prophet ﷺ had for his followers, the love that he had for the ummah, overshadowed everything. We know the narrations, the hadith, where on the Day of Judgment, people will be going to the different prophets. People will be going to Musa alayhi salam. They'll be going to Isa alayhi salam. They'll be going to Ibrahim alayhi salam, saying, can you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to start the judgment process? And when people go to them, what they'll be saying is nafsi, nafsi, nafsi. That at this point, the only thing I'm worried about is myself. Imagine great prophets like Ibrahim alayhi salam, Musa alayhi salam. They're saying, I'm worried about myself. I have no time to look for you. I have no time to care about you. I'm worried about myself at this point. It's Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam at that time, when he doesn't say nafsi, nafsi, he doesn't say, what about me? He says, ummati, ummati. What about my people? What about my followers? Even at that time, when every single person, including the greatest prophets, are concerned only about themselves, you have the Prophet ﷺ worried about us. That's not a small issue. Because if Ibrahim ﷺ, whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose to be one of the greatest prophets, who's known as Khalilullah, the close friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if he's concerned and worried, scared about himself on the Day of Judgment, then what's going to be the condition of all of us? Yet you see Rasulullah ﷺ again, not being worried about himself, rather being worried about his followers, about the ummah. So when this ayah was revealed, when this surah was revealed, when Rasulullah ﷺ was informed that your followers, the believers, will have this special gift in Jannah, understand that there's really no significance of a river. What's being implied is that the believers, your ummah, will receive another gift along with Jannah. Along with Jannah, there's another gift for you. And it's the fact that the ummah of Rasulullah ﷺ is able to enjoy Jannah, able to enjoy all these different things in Jannah, including this river, that made Rasulullah ﷺ excited. That allowed Rasulullah ﷺ to forget about all his worries, about the fact that he just lost his son, about the fact that you have the enemies of Rasulullah ﷺ running around saying things like, we're very happy that he lost his son. Why? Because the love of his love for his people, for his ummah, for his followers, overshadowed his love for anything else. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes on to say, فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ. That because, and this is a reminder for all of us as well, that this is waiting for us in Jannah as well. This Al-Kawthar, this beautiful river. And Al-Kawthar, another meaning of Al-Kawthar, as the scholars of Tafsir, they mention, that Kawthar is not restricted only to this beautiful river, but encompasses all types of blessings which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. And it's a reminder for us that Inna a'tainaka al-Kawthar, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us many, many blessings. Blessings more than which we can ever count. Blessings more than which we can ever enumerate. Because every single day, every single minute, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is blessing us with something. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is blessing us with the ability to breathe. You have physical blessings, you have so many different types of blessings. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding us that along with the blessing of Al-Kawthar, the river in Jannah, there's so many different blessings that we as human beings have been given, even though we don't deserve it. We're not worthy of these blessings. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then goes on to say, because I'm continuing to bless you on a daily basis, every single moment of your life I'm blessing you, فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ. Therefore, pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and make sacrifices for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is looking for. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not looking for us to feed Him. And that Allah mentions that in the Quran. That Allah did not create us so that we can sustain Allah. Allah did not create us so that we can work for Allah in the sense that we increase His kingdom or His riches or His treasures. Rather, the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us is so we can worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah is giving us the biggest reason why we should obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, why we should worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because of the constant blessings which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ. So therefore pray to your Lord. Pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because of all these blessings which Allah has given you. Wanhar, and make sacrifices. And over here, wanhar specifically means to sacrificing an animal. On the day of Eid, we sacrifice an animal. Why? Not because we want extra meat or we just want to eat. It's because it's a way of showing, it's a way of worship and obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sacrificing something which costs us money, sacrificing our time, sacrificing our wealth for the pleasure to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then lastly, the last ayah, which really seals everything, to console Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam on his loss. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, "Inna shani'aka huwal abtar." That all these people, Abu Lahab, all the As ibn Wa'il, all these guys that were running around saying things like, don't worry about Muhammad anymore. Why? He lost his son. You can forget about him. Allah is reminding the Prophet ﷺ that everything is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That as long as we continue to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as long as we continue to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there can be unforeseen circumstances. It can look as though the tides are against us. It can look as though we are in big trouble. It can look very bad for us. But as long as we maintain our relationship and contact with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is a reminder for us that Allah is in control, and the same situations which are against us now can be for us sometime later. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, all these people who are distracting you, all these people who are harassing you, all these enemies of yours, huwa al-abtar, they are the ones who will be forgotten. We hear the name of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam so many times throughout the day. The name of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is being mentioned at one place or another. Right? SubhanAllah, right now it's a time for Jummah. Somewhere else in the world it's a time for Fajr, and the adhan for Fajr is going off. Somewhere else it's a time for Maghrib. Somewhere else it's time for Asr. Right? At any given moment, the name of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is being mentioned. The name of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is being spoken of with honor and dignity. Yet, the enemies of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abu Jahl, As ibn Wa'il, Abu Lahab, aside from their names, who remembers them? Who remembers anything about them? Who remembers, what they did? No one. They are only remembered when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is mentioned. They are remembered because of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Just being affiliated with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave them that honor, that dignity. That till today we remember their names. Why? Because of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And subhanAllah, this in itself is one of the greatest miracles of the Quran. We know that the biggest miracle of the Quran is the eloquence of the Quran. That the Quran is unchallenged in its beauty. Allah mentions that over and over in the Quran. That if you don't believe in the Quran, then present something like the Quran. If you think that Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the one who made up the Quran, then he's a human, you're a human, then make something like the Quran. Right? But also in the Quran we see that Allah gives us knowledge about what's to happen in the future. We see that in the Quran Allah gives us information about things which no one knew of back then. Like for example, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us as human beings in the womb of our mothers. So much accurate information, which we are finding out only today. And this happens to be one of them. Now imagine you have a person, making that sort of prophecy at a time when he has lost everything. He's lost his son. He doesn't have any parents. He's not wealthy. He hardly has any followers. There's this entire community, all the powerful leaders are trying to kill this person and his family and his followers. And at that point, to make such a claim that you'll be on the receiving end, that you're the ones who will be completely forgotten, it's not a small thing to say. In fact, when they heard this, it was a laughing matter. You just lost your son. You have no followers at all. You're so weak, and you're telling us we're going to be forgotten? You're telling us that you're going to be the one in charge? It's a laughing matter. Yet 1400 years later, we see that it's the exact opposite. It's exactly like how the Quran had mentioned, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had revealed it to us. Right? So subhanAllah, this ayah in itself is enough to really solidify our iman in the Quran. That the Quran is really munazzal min Allah. that it is really something which is divine. It is the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because for a person to make such a prophecy, an outrageous prophecy at that time, a prediction, it's really, when you make a prediction, you try to be safe. You look at all the other circumstances and then you make that prediction. Over here, it's the exact opposite. Subhanallah. So the last ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning that, don't worry about these people. It is your enemies that will be completely forgotten, and the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's name will continue to go on. And you see that in today's time, that is exactly the case. That is exactly the scenario. So going back to all this, the Quran was revealed to us as Muslims, not only to guide us in our deen, not only to guide us in what is halal, what is haram, but also to guide our emotions. That at difficult times, that at times when everyone is against us, as long as we continue our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as long as we continue to فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ, we continue to pray salah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we continue to worship and obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of us. That is the biggest message. And even beyond that, Allah is reminding us of all the blessings He has given us. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to fully understand this surah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to worship and obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the manner which Allah wants to be. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to value the blessings which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with. Ameen. بارك الله لنا ولكم في القرآن المجيد ونفعنا وإياكم بالآيات وذكر الحكيم أستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله قال الله تعالى في القرآن المجيد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وصل على المؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات وبارك على محمد وأزواجه وذريته قال النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام أرحم أمتي بأمتي أبو بكر وأشدهم في أمر الله تعالى عمر وأصدقهم حياء عثمان وأقضاهم علي وفاطمة سيدة نساء أهل الجنة والحسن والحسين سيدا شباب أهل الجنة وحمزة أسد الله وأسد رسوله رضوان الله تعالى عليهم أجمعين. Dear brothers and sisters, before we conclude today's khutbah, just a few announcements. Inshallah, we'll make the announcements over here because when we make them over there, there's some difficulty in understanding because of the mics. We apologize. Firstly, we will be having our fundraiser, inshallah, March 12th. March 12th, which is just less than a month from now, we will be having our fundraiser at the mansion. And understand that the fundraiser is not just, we're not just asking you buy tickets, eat, and then give money and walk away. It's also an opportunity for us to show you the progress that we've been making. You guys see me up here speaking, but in reality, the people that are the trustees, the board members of this masjid, they're doing a lot of hard work. They're spending a lot of their free time as well overseeing the project, ensuring that different facilities are available, to ensure that the finances of the masjid are going well. These things take up a lot of time. And for people who just want to say, I want to be the president, or I want to be this person or that person, it takes a lot of time. It's not easy work. So those are some of the things that we'll be sharing with you, that what progress have we made over the past year? What are the future plans with the expansion? So it's a really good time to participate, get an idea of where this community is headed, what work has been done, and how we plan on getting there. So we need your support. This is our community. This is our masjid. These are places where, inshallah, we will allow our children to visit, and our children will grow up, and our grandchildren, so on and so forth. But none of this can be possible without your support as a community. So inshallah, our fundraiser will be March 12th at the mansion. It'll start at 6 p.m. In order to attend the fundraiser, inshallah, we'll be having the tickets as a head count. If you want to purchase the tickets, then you can purchase some. You can purchase from myself, Sister Zaida, Brother Bilal, or any of the board members. We all have tickets, and we also have a flyer outside which gives you information of all the people you can purchase the tickets from. And lastly, the second announcement is that, inshallah, our salah times will be changing from tomorrow onwards. Salatul Fajr will be at 5:45 tomorrow, and Salatul Asr will be 3:30, starting from tomorrow. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون فاذكروا الله يذكركم واشكروه ولا تكفرون.